You ever wonder why passion can fade over time, even in a really happy, loving relationship? It turns out, the answer probably isn't about some kind of failure. It's actually about how our brains are wired. So let's get into it and explore the fascinating psychology of what keeps desire alive.
I mean, it's a question we've all probably asked ourselves at some point, right? You can be deeply in love, totally committed, and yet that initial, electrifying spark can start to feel a little dim. But here's the thing. This isn't a personal failure. It's a totally universal human experience. And just understanding that is the first step.
And the key to understanding it all is this concept called sexual novelty. Now, this isn't just a fancy way of saying try new things in the bedroom. It's way deeper. It's about a fundamental principle of how our brains work. We are literally wired to respond to newness, to playfulness, and to curiosity. It's the stuff that wakes up our brain's reward system.
So, let's dig into the science here for a minute because this is so important to get. Craving a little variety isn't some kind of character flaw or a sign of disloyalty. Nope, it's just a reflection of your brain's basic programming. It's not weakness, it's wiring.
Okay, so what's so interesting is that our brain is kind of pulled in two different directions at once. On one hand, it absolutely loves comfort, the safety of patterns, routines, knowing what to expect. But on the other hand, it craves excitement. It wants surprise, it wants newness, because that's what triggers a rush of that amazing feel-good chemical, dopamine.
And that dopamine hit, well, that is the fuel for the famous honeymoon phase. Think about it. Early in a relationship, everything is new. Their stories, their touch, their little quirks. All this novelty is just flooding your brain's reward system with dopamine, and that creates that incredible, intoxicating feeling of connection and excitement.
But of course, here's the catch. Our brains are super efficient, so over time, they adapt. What used to be new and electrifying becomes familiar and comfortable, and that dopamine hit starts to lessen. And this is the crucial point. This isn't a sign that your love is fading. It's just simple, totally predictable biology doing its thing.
In fact, this whole biological blueprint has a name, and it helps us understand what's going on even better. It's called the Coolidge Effect.
So the Coolidge Effect, it's this thing researchers noticed, first in animals, but it definitely applies to us humans too. Basically, it's the finding that sexual interest tends to go down with a familiar partner, but can be renewed almost instantly when a new partner is introduced.
Now, I know that can sound a little harsh, but this analogy just nails it. It's not that your favorite meal or your partner has lost any of its value at all. It's just that our senses, our brains, are wired to light up for variety. The craving is for newness, not necessarily for someone new. That's the distinction.
And look, this is the most important thing to remember here. Understanding this stuff is not about making excuses for being disloyal. Not even close. It's about understanding our own internal wiring so we can be smart and intentional about keeping our long-term relationships dynamic, curious, and, well, alive.
Okay, so that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If our brains are wired for novelty, how do we bring it into our relationships in a way that actually strengthens our bond instead of threatening it? How do we balance that deep need for comfort with our natural curiosity?
Well, the good news is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Really small, simple shifts can make a huge difference. For instance, just changing the environment, moving from the bedroom to the living room, say, can jolt your brain out of its routine. Or varying the pace, sometimes slow and sensual, other times fast and playful. That unpredictability is exciting. Even just shifting who initiates can disrupt those old patterns. And honestly, sometimes the biggest novelty is just talking. Sharing fantasies out loud is an incredibly intimate way to explore new territory together.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because exploring novelty isn't just about the physical stuff. It's about building a much deeper level of trust through what we could call shared vulnerability. I mean, really stop and think about it. When you suggest trying something new, you're not just talking about a technique. You are putting yourself out there, big time. You're risking rejection. You're thinking, what if they think that's weird? What if they say no? That is a huge, vulnerable moment.
And that right there is why how you communicate is literally everything. If it comes across as a criticism, like I'm bored, I need this to stay interesting, well, that feels like a threat. But if you frame it as an invitation, hey, I'd love to explore this with you, I think it could be fun for us, that changes the entire game.
So it all comes down to this. When novelty is framed as a shared adventure, as a joint exploration, it stops being a threat to what you have. Instead, it becomes this amazing invitation to connect on a whole new level. It's about rediscovering each other, not rejecting each other. And when you actually pull that off, When you both take that leap, risk a little bit of awkwardness, and learn something new together, wow, the intimacy that builds is just profound. It strengthens the entire emotional foundation of your relationship, far beyond just the bedroom.
I just love this quote. It really gets to the heart of it. This whole conversation isn't just about spicing things up. It's about making a conscious choice to stay present, to stay curious, and to stay engaged with your partner. It's about refusing to let your love run on autopilot.
Ultimately, a really healthy, thriving, long-term relationship is all about this beautiful dance between our two core needs. It's about building a foundation of safety and trust that is so solid, so grounding, that it becomes the secure base from which you can both leap into adventure and growth together.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Knowing that our brains need both, how do you intentionally create that balance between comforting security and exciting curiosity in your own life and in your relationships? It's a pretty powerful question to explore.